Greetings, everyone, and welcome to the conversation series on mediation created with an aim and vision to provide awareness of mediation in the world around us and to talk about mediation and other alternative dispute resolution solutions from the perspective of a common person. We continue with a short legal disclaimer. The views expressed herein are the voluntary personal perspectives of the speakers and may or may not represent the views of the larger professional community they belong to. The conversation series aims to provide a general overview and awareness of the subject matter involved and may not be construed as a professional or legal advice in any manner whatsoever. This session is being recorded for wide circulation. Let me introduce the main speaker and the guest panelists for today's session on the SWOT analysis in mediation. We have Mr. Tyler J. Keeley. Mr. Keeley is a Florida Supreme Court certified circuit family, dependency, and county mediator. Sir, I hope I have pronounced your name correctly.
Yes, pretty close, Kelly.
Okay. A 2020 graduate of Florida Agricultural and Mechanical University's College of Law, he is a contract mediator with Florida's 13th Judicial Circuit, a panelist on the Florida Department of Financial Services Mediation Panel, an approved assistant trainer in county mediation and handles various private mediation matters. Welcome on board, sir. It's a pleasure to have you here with us.
Thank you so much. I'm very happy to be here.
We have Mr. Shrey Khurana as a guest panelist. Shrey is an international Bachelor of Communication and Media student with focus area courses in business and management from Erasmus University, Rotterdam. Among various of his professional accolades include his professional internship with Calvin Klein as a creative director assistant for the brand's Winter 2022 campaign in Amsterdam, as a photojournalist with Humans of Bombay, for the cultural Delhi event planning and social media manager, with Google India as a data analyst and social media marketing intern, where in Google AdSense initiative developed a framework for Indian market analysis, volunteered as a communication manager for Lunar Zebro project at Delft University. His expertise in soft skills include Adobe Photoshop, research and analysis, data analytics, marketing management, Python, Microsoft and Google Office Suite, photography, and visual design. We welcome you on board, Trey. It's a pleasure to have you here with us. I know you are traveling. Can you just wave to us, Trey?
Sure.
Yeah, that's good. Mrs. Aman Anwar Hussain is a graduate in English Literature and Mass Communications. She holds a master's and is currently pursuing her doctoral studies in law. She is a practicing advocate and also a family counselor with Gujarat State Legal Aid Services. Her focus areas of practice include human rights, gender equality, and family matters. So welcome on board, Aman. It's a pleasure to have you here with us. So, Mr. Tyler, sir, first of all, let me ask you, because SWOT analysis and mediation, that's a novel concept. So just the floor is yours. What is SWOT analysis?
Well, good morning, everyone. It's morning for me. I know for some of you, it's evening, afternoon, or middle of the day. I'm very happy to be here. I certainly appreciate the invitation to be able to come and talk about SWOT analysis in mediation. SWOT analysis is not something that's necessarily designed for mediation, but something I thought you could easily adapt it to mediation. It's a marketing analyst tool, stands for strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. So it's spelled SWOT, not SWAT, like not a SWAT team that comes and saves you, like the police, but SWOT. And it really, in marketing and in mediation, it's used to identify issues. And in mediation, that's one of the first things you do is you start trying to identify the issues, and it helps you categorize them very broadly into internal and external issues. and strengths and weaknesses being the things that are internal, opportunities and threats being the things that are external. And I actually recently taught a CME course over this. If you're unfamiliar with CMEs, that is what you have to, those are the credits you have to earn in Florida as a mediator to remain certified every other year. And I discussed SWOT being used in mediation, but also how you could use it as a mediator to improve yourself. So how you can almost do a SWOT analysis on yourself. So I think it's applicable to the profession, to a mediation, and then to the mediator themselves. That's the three ways that I've discussed it.
That's really great that SWOT analysis can be used to identify one's own strengths and weaknesses. So let's talk to Shrey here, because Shrey has been in the marketing and management and with Google India as a data analyst and social media marketing intern. So Shrey, as Mr. Tyler is saying that he uses SWOT analysis on a person you can use on seeing the strength and weaknesses. Could you just guide us how SWOT analysis in marketing has been helpful for you? Any instances that you could think of?
Yeah, sure. SWOT analysis, I think, is generally used as a primary analytic device. So what you do is, before you conduct any actual analysis on a market, so for instance, we do market research, which includes a lot of data and a lot of secondary and tertiary analysis methods, so statistics and stuff. Before we do all of that, we conduct a SWOT analysis to just see if the research and all the data collection and everything is even worth pursuing. So I think it's really good as a primary a primary research tool. Besides that, I also think like it is really used to just like focus your thinking in a certain way.
That's really a very good statement. Focus your thinking in a certain way. So here comes the idea of human relationship also, as Shrey puts it. Aman here, who is working you are working with human relations also. So how do you think focusing your thinking vis-a-vis human relationship, as Shrey puts it, how uh, do you think that would help?
I would like to say from the practical examples of my life, which I am dealing with in day-to-day affairs. Whenever we are sitting for family counseling, now it comes in family, it comes all the relationships of husband-wife, relationship of sister-in-law, mother-in-law. What happen is we first of all get to know the basic strengths and their weaknesses. We search out for that by one-to-one conversation. What are their strengths and what are their weaknesses? Like somewhere we find that the family is basically male oriented or male dominant family. Somewhere we see that family is taking side of female and it is female oriented family. So likewise we come to know, once we are in conversation with them regarding their strength and weaknesses, then we come to know about the boundaries of their family, boundaries of their imagination, boundaries of whatever they are thinking, and then we come to the conclusion point slowly and steadily after the basic analysis of SWOT. It is very much necessary in day-to-day life, and even I think it should be taught to our children also, that they should know their own strength and weaknesses, so that it comes for future purpose, it would be very beneficial.
That's really great, because it is helpful for everyone. So Shrey, can you tell us or any experiences that you have? We know that you are traveling, you are in a train. Can you tell us any experience that you have had and any that you would share that something helped you, the strategies of SWOT analysis helped you in some way?
To be honest, it's again, we use it as a primary research tool, and the only thing it does is it quite literally just tells you your strengths, weaknesses, and opportunities and threats. We use it as a way to look at the market and just see if a product or service is even worth trying to make. It's even before you make a product or a service a reality, you see if it's even worth creating and like giving out there to the market. And yeah, that's basically like it's a very primary level of analysis, and most of it I think isn't very data centered or very objective in nature. It's what you can think of at the time as your strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats that are translated into what you see on the paper or wherever you're conducting this analysis.
Thank you so much, Ray. That was good. So Tyler, when both of them have spoken, now I come to you as a professional mediator and a trainer. How you incorporate that in mediation, because that will be important for us.
Yeah, remember I said, and I know Shrey certainly knows this as well, you're really categorizing things as internal and external. In mediation, you're answering the question of, does the party have control over it, or do they not have control over it? And if it's something they have control over, it's either a strength or weakness. And if it's something they don't have control over, it's an opportunity or a threat. So I like to give examples. I think that helps. The easiest thing that you can see as a threat is the weather. So I'm in Florida. We are subject to hurricanes here, and there's nothing anyone can do about that. If the hurricane comes through and your mediation gets rescheduled, it gets rescheduled. The weather is a threat. Likewise, maybe there's an opportunity there, right? If you needed a mediation to be put off because you're expecting some procedural stuff to go through, maybe that's an opportunity. Sometimes it's a little bit in the eye of the beholder, but they're the things that you don't have control over. The things that you do have control over. I gave a list when I did my CME, and one thing, so I do a lot of county mediations, working here in the 13th Circuit. And one of the things I run into a lot is pro se parties. So that's people who are not represented by counsel. And it's typically in small claims matters. So, it's the shared fence line, landlord tenant, things like that, small disputes. And one of the things that is a strength for some parties is they've been to court a lot. They're very familiar with the process. They know, kind of what their own legal standing is. That can also be a weakness if the party is unfamiliar with the legal system, if they are unfamiliar with the process. It may hamper their own decision making because they don't quite know what's going to happen next. And for the mediator, it's always to see, I refer to those parties as being sophisticated. If they're not represented, but they've been to court a lot, I consider them more sophisticated parties because they're familiar with that. Very important to identify sophisticated parties early in the process so that you know just how familiar they are. And I don't think it's too difficult to do. You usually can tell by the way that the party represents themselves, right? Parties that are unfamiliar with the process tend to be more nervous. They tend to have a very short opening statement. They're just, they're trying to fill their way out. And as the mediator, you can help by making them feel more comfortable, trying to relieve some of that nervousness. And if they are a more familiar party, you can ask more targeted questions early, and they may even expect that of you. But those are, just some examples of SWOT analysis. I always find it's very helpful to see Exactly what are we talking about in a mediation? Like what would we categorize as a strength or a weakness? And there's some crossover. Some parties, one thing is a strength, for others, it's a weakness. So yeah.
Yes, that's really great. Because when we are talking about uh, the issues involved and the pro se parties, as you told, so that makes a lot of sense. Uh, that when you are able to see what the parties need and what how you are managing and how the your pros and cons of the issues here. So, are there any specific strategies that you teach in this, specifically as far as mediation is concerned?
Yeah, I actually, if I don't mind, I want to go back and talk about one other thing Shrey brought up, that it's a very preliminary aspect, and that is very true. I first learned about SWOT in business school myself. I used it in helping a small business develop their plan and kind of get going. They only had 2 or 3 locations, and it is very preliminary. And I think the value of it being such a preliminary tool in mediation is sometimes it's helping the parties assess, is a mediation appropriate right now? So as the mediator, you have this duty to the process to make sure that mediation is appropriate. You have to make that assessment. And one of the things to do is to think about, well, what are mediation's strengths? What are mediation's weaknesses? One of the strengths of mediation is that it's so flexible. It tends to be very cost effective as opposed to litigation. These are strengths that are inherent to mediation. And then some of the weaknesses are that it's not adjudicatory, right? So there's not going to be a decision made. We always run into a party who it's really not about money or about the issue. It's about being told that they need to be told they've won or that they're right. And sometimes mediation may not be able to get to them that. Now my experience is that the party who wants to be told that they're right is many times they want to be heard. They've not been heard yet, and you can alleviate that by giving them that opportunity. But I just wanted to bring that up, that addressing it being a preliminary tool, it is. And I think one of the best things parties can do when they're looking in to different forms of dispute resolution is assess what are the strengths of mediation, what are the weaknesses of mediation. That confidentiality rule, it could be both. Sometimes parties look at that and say, fantastic, I can say what I want to say and it remains confidential. Sometimes parties could look at that and say, well, no, I want a public apology. I want this on the record. I don't want it to be confidential. Flexibility can cover you there, right? The parties could agree. They could agree to say, well, there's going to be a public apology, right? But I think that can help parties in picking. Mediation is not the only form of dispute resolution because it's what I'm in. I think it's the best one, but that's of course subjective to me. But yeah, so and I know you asked, are there any specific tools or specific strategies that I suggest? I think that a lot of times when you're starting mediation, you get the parties, you may either get the complaint or the answer, or the parties may even send you in a summary of kind of the facts, the legal standing, the procedural stuff. As the mediator, the best thing you can do here is go through that. And every time, many complaints are numbered, it'll say fact 1, fact 2, fact 3. You can look at each one of those and ask yourself, is it a strength or a weakness? Presume all the facts are true as they give them to you, kind of like you might do in summary judgment hearing, and say, would that be a strength or a weakness to their case? And this helps you kind of organize your thinking process. And if you walk into the mediation, you may already have some well-developed questions that you want to ask the parties. Of course, being flexible, you can let them lead the direction it goes. But I think it really is back to what Shrey says. It's a great way to start off. You're identifying issues, you're categorizing them, and it starts before you even do that opening statement. It starts when you start looking at those summaries that the parties provide you.
That's really wonderful. So Shrey, I do understand that you're traveling, you were in a train and you covered up actually at the last moment I had to request him to come up. So any closing comments that you have, or any experience you want to share with your work, since you have also worked with as a photojournalist with Humans of Mumbai, and Google India as a data analyst and social media marketing intern. So anything that you would like to share with us from practical experience?
No, not at the moment, actually. I'm actually kind of getting late to a meeting, so I think it's I just excuse myself.
Yeah, we understand. Thank you so much for joining us. So we now we come back to Aman and Tyler. Aman, here, as Tyler was explaining how human relationships also can be handled. As Shrey also mentioned earlier, that human relationship can be handled with your emotions also. So, was analysis could be similar to Patna, Vatna, and Latna that we do in negotiations? Somewhat similar. Can I say as a layperson? Anybody
Yes,
wants to take that? Oh, okay.
So, I'm sorry, I thought Amon was gonna
Okay.
respond there.
Yes. Anybody can respond. Like for me, as a layperson and as a lay mediator, I mean, not knowing the nuances of SWOT analysis, could Vatna, Malatna be similar or in sync with this strategy of mediation or of analysis? Can anybody share?
I'm not sure I'm familiar with that. Can you tell me a little bit more about that strategy?
Okay. Uh, like like in negotiations, we say best alternative to negotiated agreement. That's partner. Partner is worst alternative to negotiated agreement, and Malatna is the latest term that is the okay. Let's handle Batna and Batna first. So Batna is the best alternative. That what is my best alternative if I don't make this negotiation right now, this mediation or negotiation, this agreement does not happen. What is my best alternative? And what is my worst alternative? So in toto, I think that would be like my best, my strength and my weakness, and I measure them, and uh, like in negotiation. So what's your
Absolutely.
yeah.
So I've not heard the acronym before, but the concept very familiar with you. This is a common question I'll ask parties in county mediations. Well, if we don't get an agreement today, what's best case scenario in front of a judge or a jury, or what's your worst case scenario, right? And that's a form of reality checking for them. But yeah, so I'm familiar with the concept. I think in mediation, a lot of times what you're getting the parties to think about by pointing out, what's the best case scenario, what's the worst case scenario, is those things they don't have control over, right? You're asking them, what are the possible threats of not coming up with an agreement? If you don't get an agreement, what's your worst case scenario? For most parties, it's, if they're the plaintiff, it's that their case gets dismissed. And if they're the defendant, it's that they end up, with a judgment against them. The opportunities, the reverse. So I do think that concept, it plays into mediation, or plays into the SWOT analysis, and that you're asking the parties to consider, what might those opportunities and threats look like at the end of the day. If you don't work something out here, what happens next? And they will my experience is that the parties tend to think of their things they have control over, right? They tend to say, well, I'm going to bring this person in to testify, I'm going to present this piece of evidence, right? You ask them to consider the threats, and they start responding with what the strengths are that they have control over. So sometimes the question has to be more targeted. You have to get them to think about, okay, well, what if the judge doesn't let that witness in? What if the judge doesn't let that piece of evidence in? What if there's some sort of procedural rule that keeps it out? And in small claims, at least in the United States and in Florida, procedural rules are a lot more lax on purpose. It's a lot more, relaxed. It's not entirely relaxed, but sometimes you've got to target that question a little bit more, because as soon as you ask them to consider the threats, they'll start listing off their strengths. So you've got to get them to think in the right category. You need them to be thinking in threats category, not strengths category.
Yes, that's really great. So any closing comments, Aman, from you?
Yeah, sure. I would like to say that mediation is a process where both of the parties are actually having a win-win situation. Instead of going to court, opting for this, that, and in India, it is a long adjournment processes. Even as an advocate, we get tired, and clients, they also get tired. They waste a lot of years, and it's better if they opt for mediation. And SWOT analysis is the best thing. If one is very much comfortable with the strength and weaknesses of their own, they would go for negotiation. Even Supreme Court has passed the guidelines here, and they have given training to some of the lawyers here in India, that in maximum in family matters go for mediation, as well as in company matters and other matters also, negotiation is given the first priority. Mediation is given the first priority for negotiation. So this is the best thing, and if SWOT is actually applicable and actually it is applied, then it would be a very good initiative.
Yes, that's really a good initiative, because when you are aware of what is happening, what is on the mediation table, especially for commercial cases, when you are aware of your strengths, your weaknesses, your opportunities, which can happen on or outside of the mediation table, and your threats that once the mediation does not fructify, and what are the threats that are prevailing. So that is really a good strategy to, as Shrey also pointed out, from for the starting. And Mr. Tyler also said, yes, please.
Yeah, I was going to add, I was going to say a lot of the cases I deal with, they're immediately ordered to mediation. They go to a pretrial conference and they get sent to mediation almost just automatically, regardless of what's going on in their case. It's at least go try. And because of that, I face a lot of parties who they don't know what mediation is. They don't really want to be there. They're not bought into the process. And so I have to sort of sell the process to them in a very short amount of time to say, hey, give this a chance. Maybe this can help. And one of the ways SWOT ties into this is, the strengths of mediation, right? The strengths are that it's faster resolution for one, right? You don't sit in the court system for months or even years. It is that the communications stay confidential, flexibility in terms of what they can agree to. I've got all sorts of agreements in mediation that you would never get through a court order or a judgment, right? You can just agree to things. It's just a flexible process. Cost is one of the big benefits. And all of these strengths are things that a lot of those parties that show up who got ordered there and maybe don't want to be there, they're not aware of these strengths, or they've just not thought of them. So what I like to do is take them strengths that every mediator has probably already identified 1,000 times and to, present it to them parties as opportunities. So I'll give you an example of how I do that. In your opening statement, the Florida rules require that you talk about mediation being a voluntary and consensual process. And you explain what that means, that no one can force the parties to do anything, and that once you finish the opening, they're free to go. They've appeared. They don't have to stay and participate. But I always like to add, I always say this is one of the benefits of mediation. There's a lot of flexibility here in terms of what you can do. Flexibility that you may not have if you have a third party come in and determine the outcome for you. And that third party is a judge or a jury. And that's one of my ways of taking one of those strengths and trying to present it to a party who may not have bought into the process yet as an opportunity. And generally speaking, the strengths of mediation as a process, as a form of dispute resolution, are almost always opportunities for the parties that are participating in mediation. And sometimes you as the mediator just have to show them that, to get them to think of it in those terms.
That's really wonderful. I think that sums it all up. So that was a wonderful session on SWOT analysis, and we hope that it helps others find out their strengths, their weaknesses, their opportunities, and their threats before they go and on the mediation table and try to finally find a resolution to their disputes. Thank you, everyone, and this was a wonderful session.
Thank you so much. It was nice being with you.
Yes, thank you. Thank you again for inviting me, for having me here. It's been wonderful to discuss with the other speakers you've had. I hope that we're able to discuss mediation more in the future, some different concepts, but it's been fantastic. And just thank you so much for having me.
Pleasure. It was a pleasure.